okay? Yeah. Did you,
Yeah,
did you
just
taekwondo? Did you taekwondo did tonight?
No, I'm doing it on Tuesdays and Fridays for the next few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Gotcha. Wow, we were 2 minutes late, and Murr is tapping on his desk waiting. It's great to see you too, Murr.
But oh yeah, pop out chat. Where's pop out chat? YouTube.
Hey,
Here we go. Training wheels.
Hey, we're getting our numbers up there. It's great to see. Hey, there you go, Norm. Norm is yeah, one of our outlaws here from I think the inception of the term outlaw. As well as Murr has been one of our fans for a while. So great to hear from guys. I always look forward to hearing from you guys in our chat. So Murr, I just recently got my copy of Seventh Continent. So what you sent me in the mail there definitely it worked. So I appreciate that, and it's very cool. I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff is in that. It's just comes in that adventure. It's like a mixture of like an escape room together with an RPG dungeon, like kind of Gloomhaven, or I don't know. What do you think, Trent? Have you had a chance to crack open the box?
No.
Problem solved.
There's Carter. So it looks like, guys, we've got our stuff ready to go here. I'm glad you're able to make it, Trent, because I definitely have been looking forward to hearing from you in terms of on our topic. It's a great suggestion. A lot of times, we give game recommendations and say these are really great games, but we don't say, sometimes we give caveats like you might want to be careful, not play this one first. And this will be kind of like that, an opportunity to make sure people are easing their way into heavier experiences, and don't do what I did, which is to jump into too far and get myself too like me and Andy have similar arcs in our story. Just Andy's like sort of like the superhero tale where he comes out on top as like a changed man, and mine is like I got in over my head and came out.
Joe drowned in the pool. I learned how to wade.
What happened is I decided I couldn't swim and just like went back to where I could touch the bottom. But I still venture out. I still do, and it's it still is. But I'll tell you right now, man, it's let's put it like this: it's not just a swimming pool, man. We're talking like a wave pool, and that thing is like cranked all the way up. And
Joe now has PTSD around poker.
Well, and only that, Andy. But I would say if we're gonna keep this metaphor going, like I would be the guy who, like, in the deep end of this extremely turbulent wave pool, I'm the guy who like barfs into the water and just makes everybody else go, oh
yeah, when you like knocked over your stacks of poker chips, you're like, I don't care anymore. No more numbers. No more numbers.
It's like, did I remember to take money from that last time? I don't remember.
I don't care. Just here's my chips. I know I
got close to this amount. I took last. I know general ballpark figures. You guys do the rest of the math. I can't do it anymore. I was done. Yeah. So yeah, I guess maybe it's more the people like me that need this type of an episode, because with Andy, it's like, had you eased your way into it, maybe it wouldn't be so special. Maybe it wouldn't be so near and dear and close to your, just inextricable from your identity as a gamer, that like your whole idea is that you get yourself overwhelmed and then that's perfect. Yay. 3.
Yeah, I will not lose.
3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sow, and I am being joined tonight by my entire panel of co-hosts that are regularly occurring here. We got first the new guy to the group, TC Reed, who had an awesome weekend here. Tell everybody what you were doing, TC.
I was Gamestorming it the whole weekend of board gaming. It was great.
If you didn't catch our last episode, TC actually recorded after playing a bit of Gamestorm. He came back to enjoy an episode of my top 10. So which he's still recovering from that. So anyway, if you notice any symptoms of PTSD, that was and also the con crud, right?
Oh yeah, can't you hear it?
Well, I had some of the stuff of my own this last weekend, but it wasn't from any convention. I guess I hold a Spanish convention in my ninth grade classroom every single weekday, school day. So maybe I got the con cred, if that's what you want to call it. But anyway, I'm not the only teacher at this panel. We've also got Andy Dennison joining us. He's our heavy gamer and also retiring teacher.
Well, not retiring. You're off. Maybe retiring.
Andy, the way that you're talking, you deserve to be called a retiring teacher. Everything Andy's been saying to me about teaching is like, everybody tells me what I need to do over the summer. I don't care.
Yeah, but to be fair, my professor taught us, look at the research, do what you know is right, and do enough that you can to make the administrators think you're doing what they want.
That is an interesting yeah. Apparently somebody had some bad experiences with administrators.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Andy Dennison joining me. And then also we've got Trent Ham. So Trent, how are you doing tonight?
All right. Tired.
Tired, but you're not tired from Taekwondo tonight.
Nope. Tired from not getting enough sleep.
Oh boy. Well,
that's worse.
Work our way towards getting Trent some sleep. But first, we're going to be talking about a topic that Trent suggested. Tonight's topic is going to be training games, or training wheels, as I say. What are some games that you should play to get yourself prepped for other maybe more complex games? And what are those sort of rewarding Easter eggs, those rewarding pot of gold at the end of the rainbows that are worth working towards. So complex games that are worth your time and the games that you can play to get yourself prepared for it. And I think that's a great idea for an episode, Trent, and I appreciate you suggesting that.
No problem.
So, yeah, cool. So first, before we get into our main section where we're going to talk, like I said, about training games, and then, of course, that's before we finish our episode with some hype, we first review games. Each of us has picked a game. We're going to be talking about it to give a bit of a review to you. So I'm going to start here because I broke rules, as I always do, as Andy's going to come and apparently, I don't know what the new threat is. Are you gonna like unplug everything in my house? Or are you just going to like come and make sure that I can't ever break rules again? Because Mr. Dennison's 7th grade science classroom, everything Mr. Dennison says goes.
Yeah, it is. The time they're like, a while back, they're like, you should be president, Mr. Dennison. I'm like, no, you do not want me to be president. They're like, why not? I'm like, because if I wanted to run a democracy, I wouldn't have become a teacher. This is a dictatorship, pure and simple.
Well, some game nights are run by a benevolent dictator who is joining us in our chat, as is some other folks as well that have been here with us for a while. We've got Norm, we've got Murr, who I was referring to there. We've got Dean. Good to see you, Dean. I know that Dean's on the East Coast, so like Trent, he's getting tired. We've got Paul from our local gaming group. Great to hear from you. And also Carter. So great to see so many awesome peeps that are going to be joining us. And I look forward to reading your comments as we continue to progress through our reviews. So starting off with reviews, like I said, I'm kicking it off with Bioshock. I'm breaking the rules by choosing a video game on a board gaming podcast. This is because I am currently in my tennis coaching phase, which is about a 2-month period of the year where I don't do anything outside of my teaching job and my coaching job. So I am very, very happy to be a tennis coach. We just had a big win tonight over one of our I guess friendly rivalries. I don't know. I feel like a school that we really enjoy playing against because we all get better. But I don't get a chance to play board games as much anymore, unfortunately. And it especially, sadly, takes me out from my ability to run the gamers group at our school, which Carter from our chat actually participates in. So I'm really, I miss doing gamers. and I also don't get a chance to game very much. Had I not played a game of Azul with my wife earlier, right before this recording, I wouldn't have played games in like the last, I want to say 9 or 10 days, something like that. So it's been a little while. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Bioshock. Bioshock is a game, and I'm just going to talk like just Bioshock the collection, because I'm not going to go super in depth to it. Let's just say that the idea of Bioshock is it's a shooter, like a first-person shooter mixed with an RPG game, where you kind of like manage, your stats and different things, and you have different special abilities, so you can sort of augment your ability to use like the different weapons in the game. There's a lot of progression systems that you see a lot if you play modern video games. But basically what Bioshock does, on top of sort of mixing together RPG and shooter, is it also takes place in a extremely vividly realized world that is like Atlas Shrugged, the Ayn Rand philosophy, where all of the, or not all of, but a large group of elites of the world decided that they were tired of being held back by things like morals and what they call parasites, which is people that sort of latch onto the government, and they decided to go make their own collective and make their own sort of civilization, and they do so at the bottom of the sea. As the founder of this town, which is called Rapture in Bioshock, the town of Rapture, the founder of it, whose name is Andrew Ryan, it's a very non-subtle hint towards Ayn Rand. He says, it was not impossible to build Rapture at the bottom of the sea. It was impossible to build it anywhere else. And it's just, and the entire game is just filled with those types of deep philosophical, not just philosophical, but like deep literary references that if you understand the source material, it is extremely rich. And you figure out really quickly that it is a very dystopian imagining of this Ayn Rand philosophy, where you've got all the inhabitants of Rapture have been turned into sort of devolved into gene splicing mutants, where they just are hostile towards you. But there's also some sort of weird little gems that are hidden throughout, weird little pockets of humanity that are hidden amongst this, and that's a lot of that takes place in the form of these these gigantic drill wielding construction mechs that are being repurposed to guard little girls that whose job it is to like harvest this resource that's specifically like sort of almost like the drug that is needed to fuel the gene splicing. It's like a mixture of like a drug that you need to live and a drug that's just like it's just like addicts. They're just like these addicts that are inhabiting this place. And it weaves together a compelling story of a civil war taking place in Rapture. If you continue to play throughout the different games in the genre, which include Bioshock, Bioshock 2, a DLC content that is amazing that you shouldn't miss for Bioshock 2 called Minerva's Den, and then Bioshock Infinite, which is a set, instead of in Rapture, it's set in a city in the clouds that now explores like jingoism, xenophobia, and then religious fervor, which is, it's interesting to see like the founding fathers of the United States being portrayed as like sort of gods or prophets, and it's sort of like an exploration of that, that taking those ideals to a extreme level. So anyway, Bioshock Infinite. But if you play throughout these, you'll just see sort of an evolution and just different explorations that are very intriguing and that kept my attention from a story standpoint. And there are just, some of the most memorable single moments that I can ever recall in my entire experience as a gamer have been tied to narrative points, narrative fulcrums that just change the entire structure of what I've thought about in the game that I'm playing, Bioshock, and also in what I've thought about in every game. When you're asked, just the idea a man chooses, a slave obeys. And if you don't, I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you don't know what I'm referring to and that sounds at all interesting to you, you should really check out Bioshock. It's got extremely solid gameplay mechanisms. I would say that going back and replaying it, which is what I was recently doing because my free time is so erratic, I can't play on game nights. I can't make it to the scheduled game nights. I have to just kind of take what I can get when it rains here, or snows, or is super cold. What the heck, Iowa? Anyway, I know.
Volcanic eruption.
That's what we're headed for. So the thing is, what struck me from going back and replaying them was the quality of Bioshock 1. I did not realize at what level, yes, to a certain extent, when you go back too far, I don't know. I've had experiences in retro gaming where it's like, I wouldn't want to play this. This isn't that much fun anymore. You know, it's just like this, like going back and playing a game of Pong is okay, but it's like, you know, come on, there's other things. This isn't that interesting. It just starts up the same every time. Like Bioshock is a beautiful game, even though it is the, you know, the graphically like the most primitive of the series. It's just absolutely a fantastically designed game, and one of the best levels I've ever played in any game is like it is one of the levels in Bioshock that's called Fort Frolic, and it's one of those where it kind of is, it functions as like a little bit of a break from the larger narrative. You know, which I think is really important for games to realize that, like, if they just keep you involved in the same narrative, it can get a little bit like taxing on you. But the break in the narrative here that involves a different sort of side, you know, like a different villain, a different antagonist, is just very refreshing. It's called Fort Frolic. If you ever do play it, you know, like, let me know what you thought about that. Anyway, just an amazing quality game. Bioshock 2, at least I'm playing it on PC, and it was the only game that had like problems crashing. And man, I lost like 3 or 4 hours of gameplay from a game crashing. If you guys ever had that happen, I mean, you're playing a video game and then you're like, you don't get to save your stuff, and then it freezes and you just lose all of that. Now, I know it's happened to you guys because like the idea of a save game is fairly new in gaming at large, but the idea of like getting to, you know, wasting an hour and a half of your time because you missed a save.
No. What's worse is when I played Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and at 30 hours, it corrupted my save, which then somehow went back and corrupted every save I had.
I remember that.
And that's how many hours was it you said?
That was over 30 at the time.
Oh, okay.
I basically chucked the game in the dustbin and I was done.
Yeah.
Like, nope, not starting again. I'm done.
Yeah, I was so invested, and it was always like about 45 minutes to an hour that I would lose, that I'd be like, okay. So, but it was just a fantastic experience, you know, and it's not supplanting my board gaming, you know, like there is something that is missing, you know, and it definitely is something where I can just feel that in general I'm more stressed. I'm happy to be, you know, to be a part, to be able to contribute, and to be able to, like, you know, share in the sport of tennis. But like, I am largely having to sort of tame a beast that lives inside me to keep, you know, just to keep myself from losing it. Like I feel like I'm on edge much more. I'm not getting a chance to play games like I would like. It has definitely helped fill that time, and I've really appreciated, and I would highly recommend it to anybody that what I've described so far sounds at all interesting too. So, how many of you guys have actually gotten a chance to play Bioshock or in any of its incarnations?
I've played all three.
Me all three here too.
I don't think I played 2. I played 1 and 3.
2 gets a lot of crap, and I kind of see why, because it's like it basically takes Bioshock 1, and it, first of all, it takes away the sort of bizarre hacking mini game that, like, it's so weird. If you're in the middle of a firefight, you know, you're like shooting, you can like kind of run over to a machine that's in the process of shooting you, and then enter a hacking mini game that takes like 45 seconds, and you're like trying really quickly to, like, you know, it's like, it's a game that's like sort of like almost like you're playing memory, but then you need to like sort of manage a pipe that's going from one end of the screen to the other. It's bizarre, but Bioshock 2 took that and made it like more of a real-time thing. And so it really, Bioshock 2 is more like of a smoothing out, and not as innovative, but it's definitely smoothing out what happened in Bioshock 1. They also spent a lot of time and resources into making like an online multiplayer, which I had no interest in even trying. And I don't even know if it's still live after like 8 years in the future, but yeah, but it was Bioshock 2, I think it's underappreciated because it really does like hone in a lot of the gameplay systems in Bioshock 1. But at the same time, you know, there's a huge leap between Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite, whereas, you know, you can barely tell the graphical difference between Bioshock 1 and 2.
Yeah, there was Bioshock. I mean, that's still the very first one is one of my favorite games, simply because the dilemma you're in when you first find a little sister and you're like, ooh, I can get all of this juice to make me more powerful and completely kill her, or just take a little bit
and save her. Like you like free her of her bind of being tied to this life of.
That fell into the lovely category of every game that gives you that choice, and I beat it being good. Then I go back and try to be a butt, and like the first time I do, I'm like, nope, I can't do it.
No, you can't. Yes,
I couldn't get the
like me
on my
too.
Xbox. And just that phrase that will haunt me forever from that game is "Would you kindly?" That was such an amazing twist. I haven't played the game. That was so cool. I mean, it tied into such like why you're doing it, how you're being manipulated. It's beautiful, beautiful game. And I think the lead designer of that was Kevin Levine. And talking about playing older games, I still play System Shock 2. I still love.
I want to play that one. That's one that I'm looking at getting. I mean, I'm just a little bit worried that its age is going to be an issue because I downloaded like Half-Life 1, and I played it on hard difficulty, which is probably a mistake. But it was like, man, that game is. I'm sure it was great in like '99 whenever it came out, but like by the time that I played it, or I think it was maybe '97, but by the time that I played it, it was about 12 years old, and it just looked old, and it was ungodless.
Shock 2 is still a very creepy game. And I think a lot of the reason why Bioshock still holds up is Rapture is such a fully realized setting.
Yes.
It's beautiful destruction. Wow.
It's just crazy to think of like a city operating under the ocean.
Yeah, and then I didn't think they would top that till they got to the Bioshock Infinite and did the City in the Sky. I don't entirely remember what that one was called, but that was fantastic stuff. And just to briefly mention Bioshock 2, that had like the best DLC I've ever seen for a game on Bioshock 2. Hands down, Minerva's
it was like half the length of the entire of the base game. And
it was almost better than the base game. It was unbelievable.
It was a more taut narrative, and I think one of the main issues, like without having Kevin Levine just knows storytelling. I think one of those things, I mean, just like George R.R. Martin from Game of Thrones, like you have to be able to like kill off a character kind of mercilessly. You almost have to be like have to put the story and above like these characters that you've created and you've probably grown to love. But you have to be able to like have these characters do horrible things to one another, or have them suffer from something out of their control. And I felt like in Bioshock 2, every character involved in it was pretty wooden. There wasn't quite as much of that sort of depth and exploration of character and character growth as I remember from Bioshock 1.
And Infinite, I remember beating that game and I had to like think about it for a few days afterwards going, okay, I gotta digest that for a few days.
It's a story that's actually able to somehow be cohesive and also involve like time travel / interdimensional travel.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Trent, do you have anything to add?
No, you kind of covered it.
Okie dokie. Well, then we will be moving on here from the video game realm, and thank you guys very much for my little diversion into there. It's all that I can give right now. But we're going to go ahead and move on to TC. Actually, TC, we'll let you go last. We'll let Andy go first because you're going to give us probably you're going to have a few here to mention. So we'll let Andy go. And Andy, why don't you tell us about a great area control game?
Yeah, so I think I've finally got enough plays in to kind of talk about it. The game Dominant Species, because I really felt like the last game I played at Joe's house is when like everything clicked for me. It also happened to be the only time I've won that game. But honestly, I do think like things
never again.
I was doing what I wanted to. The plans were coming out as I wanted to. There was still, little things in the way as people threw the knees and elbows and whatnot. But everything kind of worked as I thought it would work and intend. So Dominant Species is a worker placement area control game. You basically go through, you place down cylinders, you pull them off. They resolve in a certain order, and you take actions to basically, take over these hexes. So you'll have an hex, you get dominance if you can eat the right number of little discs around it or the majority, but you score based on having the most cubes there. So that's an interesting kind of balance you have to hit. Do you want to be able to dominate the disc, or do you want to be able to get the most points if it's scored? Dominance is something you want because you're able to select from these array of cards in front of you. And the cards are just nasty. Like most of them are doing horrible things to people, which is fun. Like, oh look, I'm gonna drop a meteor on this hex. Oh, you're all dead. I don't even feel that. So it's like, or you can like glaciate, spreading a glacier and wrecking people. So this is definitely a very interactive game for being a very Euro-esque game. There's a lot of, punching each other in the face, doing horrible things, eating the spiders and eating itself, things like that. But basically, it's kind of an older one at this point, but it's a really good one. It falls into that category of like, I have that are, why don't I have this in my collection? But yeah, there's videos about it. You can go check out more about it. But yeah, Dominant Species, I think it's up for 500 again, so it's about to become available again to get. If you like Euro style games, but you're looking for a lot more interaction and aggressiveness out of your game, this is definitely one to look at.
All right, then. Yeah, I'm right there with you 100%. I mean, the main complaint that I've heard about Dominant Species comes from there's two different main complaints, but they kind of seem together. I feel like it's about its interactivity, and one of those is just, in general, like, the game system has you at each other's throats like crazy. But it's not just that. The game system itself will be at your throat when you play it. And I mean, there's a lot of times, every single card that comes out of this like 26 card deck, I think, is just really impactful. Like the things that happen on these cards just really change the entire landscape of what type of area control you're even playing in different places. And I think that, that it performs a reset in many ways. So, I mean, a lot of times these really impactful events won't just be, like targeted towards a single player. A lot of times they do give the ability for players to interact with other players, but they're always just like some sort of a caveat in most cases, like it's not just like, boom, take 15 cubes from one opponent. It'll be like, take one cube, one of the species cubes that you're using to try to get dominance and try to get more than anything, try to score points. Like remove one from an opponent in every hex that you occupy together. So like you have to be there first. So you kind of have to know that you're at risk from certain things and sort of gauge. Everybody does seem to have a certain amount of talons or claws in this game to be able to use on each other. But you kind of got to figure out who's coming for you and try to put yourself in those positions depending on which animal you are. Where like, if people really are going to hurt you, it has to sort of like cost them. You know what I mean? What ended up happening with me as the insects is like I was everywhere. And so I was like everybody's second place, and they could have easily taken me out. Just like every time that I got taken out, it felt like I was just like crunch, crunch, crunch. I was just gone. But like I put myself in this position where like I was never really going for first. And so I was only ever at any point at people's throats because they were going for second with me, which usually wasn't a battle that was even worth fighting. So it was like, if you wanted to really wipe me off of a territory, it would just be you spending your actions, which you have precious few of, just to hurt me. And I mean, it's that type of an interactive game that just isn't for everybody. But I really do love this game, and the same reasons you mentioned, Andy. And Trent, you put it at your number 4. TC, it was high up on your list. I think it was your number 6.
Yep, it was there. Up there.
It was one of those.
My favorite cube pusher of all time.
Yeah, I'm like the odd man out here who didn't put Dominant Species on his list, and I love the game. So, yeah. Well, that was Dominant Species. Thank you, Andy, for sharing that. And then now, TC, take it away with several different little games
from Gamestorm. Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the
storm of games, and maybe Trent will interject a review or two in the midst of those. But I don't have a. I think I copied and pasted before we had anything written down. So we'll just let you get started here, TC, and see where we go.
All right, I just wanted to briefly mention the 3 or 4 games I played at Gamestorm that caught my attention. First, I got a progress report I wanted to give to Trent for the L5R tournament. Phoenix won. 6 people showed up. We all played. Phoenix won the tournament, followed up by Unicorn of all things. That was pretty spectacular. I ended up 4th place. Not too bad. Had fun. Since there's only 4 of us and the kit was for like 20 people, and we had prizes to go around, so it was a lot of fun, and I played with good people. So it was that.
It's all about.
Yeah. One of the few games I tried that really caught my attention was I finally sat down to play Reef Encounter by Richard, some guy who did Keyflower. Richard Breeze, thank you. That was a surprisingly mean tile laying game for the cuteness factor of it. You had a little shrimp with eyeballs, and you have coral that could go out, but wow, that was a really vicious game. And it's and I've played it because I'll never turn down a What's Your Games game. And it's one of the few ones I haven't tried yet. So if you guys haven't tried Reef Encounter, I'd suggest giving it a shot. It's a pretty slick little game. Really quite mean in the way you can adjust victory points for the tiles you have and really hose someone over who thinks they're winning the game.
Hey, Joe and Andy, you like playing games with me and my wife, watching us beat on each other? You should play Reef Encounter with us. It's pretty bad.
I do want to play this one. I never got a chance to. I really want to try it.
I've been told by several people that know my taste these days, and they're like, you really need to play this game.
Yeah, because I sat down and was like, oh, this is going to be some tile game about the ocean with cute stuff. Yeah. And then things happened. I was like, oh, holy moly. This is one of the more vicious tiling games I've seen in quite a while. Wow. So I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of this one because I think it'd be up your alley. Let's see here. I got to play. We played it. I want to mention we got a 2-player game of John Company in, and that was it worked surprisingly well at 2 players. It plays differently, but it's quite good at 2. But you know, you have a dummy player and you're rolling dice to put stuff out, and it never helps you when you need to, and the company crashes. But at 2 players, it works surprisingly well. So I can actually say John Player works as a solo game and as a 2-player game, and I would not have thought that.
Yeah, I would not have bet 2 players was a good player count for that game, but
yeah, because I figured the sweet spot would be like 5 or 6. And it
I
may
played
still
it
be
at 3 several times. It worked really well at that. Even I was surprised.
Yeah, the only difference between a 2- and 3-player game is you're rolling more dice to put more of the Jones Company out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we was like, wow. And I was like, well, that worked. That was cool. Awesome. And then, of course, we got our yearly Rex game in, and there was lots of yelling and lots of crying.
You're number
anger.
1, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was the 2 players who played last year who were in the alliance that fell apart, and one of them won. That was the first battle that happened in round 1. It's like, you know what? I'm attacking you because you screwed me over last year, so all these tanks are coming your way.
Just not going to allow that to happen again.
And at the end of round 1, like, more cardboard got just moved to the destruction pile than I've seen in quite a while. I was like, wow, I haven't seen this in a while. That's a lot of death. And the guy who was learning the game and trying to figure out, at the end of round 1, he had the best board presence because we just all went at each other and just beat each other to death. It was pretty fun. So, and of course, you know, I break that out at Gamestorm, and like the tables around us are all like, oh my God, why are they playing? They are loud and annoying. They always have to check it out and see what's going on because we're like in each other's face and yelling and having a lot of fun. And I also got a game in of Rising Sun, which I'm not entirely sure about that one. It's a beautiful game. It's really well produced. And I played the Koi, and I figured out how to not only commit seppuku, but put Ronin out and get victory points for everyone and completely wipe the area clean of figures and get like 11 victory points. So that was kind of cool.
was your game, because the one thing I've heard about people with their first game of Rising Sun is almost always like one player just runs away with it. Like in ours, I think Trent, didn't you end up with like over 100, and then like our low score was like 25 or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I was pretty tight. I mean, I was in the low 8 going into round 2, but then I figured out finally how that wrap my head around my special ability where my coins are Ronin and I can just spread it out. So I just went to like 3 territories and like destroyed everyone and got my 5 territories and I got my 20 victory points. So I was like 2nd or 3rd, but it's good. I don't know if it's 150 good, and I don't know if it's worth all the minis, but I can't deny it's a pretty game. And there's nothing quite as satisfying as buying a big monster and just going BAM! And just putting it on the board. And it just towers over everything. Like, ha! Yeah, check that out, guys. He's gonna play. That's I mean, of course, I played some other stuff, but those were the games I released. But I really wanted to make sure you guys knew about Reef Encounter. That was my surprise game at that convention this year.
That was your first game of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the guys I game with was like, this has been sitting on my shelf for years. I decided to bring it. Like, okay, let's try it out. And then I was like, why was this on your shelf for so long? This is really cool.
Yeah, it's a really pretty looking game. I got my wife to agree to play it, but we tried to play it 2-player and tried to learn it from the rule book. And it's not one of those types of games. It seems it's almost an abstract, wouldn't you say, Trent?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like weird little rules you've got to remember. Like you eat coral and you have to eat more than 4. You don't score any victory points. Oops. Mm-hmm. Can I eat less than 4 and just wipe them off the board?
Yeah. Well, TC, you ran through quite a few games there, man. That was an awesome little montage.
Yeah, that's only like a quarter of what I play, but those were the memorable ones.
For sure. Well, very cool, man. I'm glad they had a great time at Gamestorm. It's going to be a difficult time of the year for me to make it out there during Gamestorm at any point, but I definitely would love to I'm pretty sure all three, me, Andy, and Trent, really want to get you at the table and want to get some of these games like Rex that you mentioned, like other classics. Like, I really think it would be interesting, especially to see John Company, to see a lot of these games we've been talking about on the podcast played together by us as a group. So hopefully.
Well, I always have a hotel room, so at a Gamestorm, so you're always more than welcome to if you can get here. I got the place for you to crash.
That would be awesome, man.
Yeah, get together and then finally get Joe to play, and here I stand.
Yeah. That might be something I discuss later for our subject matter.
Ooh, all right, yeah, maybe that's pie in the sky. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over now to Trent to sort of introduce the topic and potentially give us a review on the way in the door if he's so inclined. But I'll just leave it up to you, Trent. I have no idea what to expect.
I'll give I was on the fence as to whether or not to actually talk about or review this, but I'm going to give it like a first look, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Okay.
I want to talk about Dungeon Alliance. It's a game by Andrew Parks for 1 to 4 players. I'm not actually sure who published it. I have to look that up. But
no, you're fine. Keep going.
The way I would describe this game is, if you're interested in it, is a mix of Arcadia Quest and Mage Knight.
Oh, dude, that's like. Yeah, if you just take like ketchup and you mix it with like rocket fuel.
Okay, so it's a little bit simpler Mage Knight, I guess I would say, but you have a party of 4 dudes moving on the map instead of 1.
It's Andrew Parks, man. You're Mr. Core Worlds.
Yeah. I mean, it's very deck building-ish. It's the deck building aspect of it feels actually a lot like Mage Knight, except the way your deck is, you only have 1 deck controlling all 4 of your characters.
Oh,
and
wow.
the start of the game, you draft characters. There's I think there's 21 of them, and you're drafting a team of 4, every player is. So what you do is you lay out a number of cards times the number of players. Let's see.
Plus
4
1.
times the number of players plus 1. So like if you're playing 4 player, you lay out 17 heroes. And you draft them, and one of them doesn't get used. Each one of those heroes has 3 cards associated with it. So your starting deck is 12 cards. It's the 3 from each of the heroes you drafted. They all have different ability scores and different things going on, and so on. Once you're actually playing, it actually reminds me kind of a Mage Knight in the sense that you're playing the cards to make your guys activate and do the things that they're going to do. But there's the deck building thing. It plays really well solo. Was a good thing I would say about it. This is how I've played it as solo. I felt it was really smooth. It honestly feels a lot like. Okay, so here's the deal. Andrew Parks was involved in the quote slight redesign of Mage Knight into Star Trek Frontiers, and what I feel like Dungeon Alliance is he played Mage Knight and is like, I really hate having to have an objective that's over on this side of the map when my dude is over here and having to figure out how to move them. What if I just really more or less got rid of that by having my entire team be a party? And one of my dudes could be over here, and I don't really have to worry that much about calculating out the movement and can use my cards for interesting stuff. That's what the game feels like to me when I'm playing it.
Sure. It's just fascinating because, like, this, you know, this really is an Andrew Parks game. It's you know, published by his design studio, his own design studio that only has one previous release. And what you said there, Trent, really almost like you see this sort of lineage coming from Mage Knight.
Yes.
And that's interesting because it's almost like, you know, to design Star Trek Frontiers, he had to really stay within the confines of Mage Knight. Maybe that was like sort of what he did, but maybe he had more interesting ideas that he wasn't really able to fit and make work inside that system. And that's kind of why we see Dungeon Alliance.
Yeah, it feels like I would say, like, it's a lot like Mage Knight. It feels like someone took Mage Knight, tweaked some of the stuff that they didn't like, and made a game that's kind of similar to Mage Knight, where the biggest thing you're really going to notice on the first play is that you have a party rather than one dude, and that gives you some options. It's just like Mage Knight in that you're building a deck as you go along, and it gets better and better and better as you go along. Just like that, you're essentially leveling up and getting experience. Just like that, your guys are collectively. There's PvP scenarios, and there's also cooperative scenarios, just like Mage Knight. One big difference is you're revealing the tiles as you go along. The weird part is you're kind of drafting them, and that whenever you go through it, you're in a dungeon, basically. It's like, rather than being on an overworld map, it's more like a dungeon crawl. And when you go through a doorway, you basically have 2 tiles to choose from, and you get to decide which one of those you want to be behind that door. And then that tile gets replaced off of the stack. So, like, imagine if Mage Knight, when you're going through the map, you kind of get 2 choices as to what tile appears there. So, that's interesting. Another thing that's interesting is this doesn't really work in the solo game, but if you're playing it multiplayer, if you're playing competitive, so you activate a hero, player 2 activates a hero, player 3 activates a hero, player 4 activates a hero, but then player 4 then activates a villain and controls it and usually goes after one of the other players with it. And then player 3 activates a villain, and player 2 activates a villain, player 1 activates a villain. So there's a bunch of monsters running around on the map. So in that, actually has a little bit of like a slight dungeon crawl feel to it, but there's no AI reliance if you're playing in 4-player, which is really interesting. It just does some things that are interesting that, like I said, remind me of Mage Knight, maybe a little bit of Arcadia Quest or a dungeon crawl. But I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to get this one on the table again. I want to try another mix of heroes. The fact that there's 21 of them, and you're making a party of 4 out of those 21 means there's a lot of permutations of what your starting deck is going to be, because each hero has 3 unique cards associated with it, and your 4 heroes each have 3 unique cards as your unique starting deck of 12. So there's a ton of replayability. There's about 15 quests. They're like different equivalent of scenarios for Mage Knight. I'm really impressed with it. I've been enjoying it. I played it once. I had it set up to play again. I was just getting going, and then a family issue occurred, so I didn't get to. I really want to play this multiplayer sometime soon, but there are enough rules changes that I'm actually going to have to read for sure how to play some of the multiplayer stuff.
Well, it sounds like there's like competitive rules and cooperative rules. So, I mean, very much sounding like Mage Knight here, where it's got, you know, many different ways you can play.
There's definitely Mage Knight in it. There's absolutely some Mage Knight in it. There's a lot of like thinking about how you're going to use your cards, thinking about what you want to take to add to your deck. When you draft a card, it goes directly into your hand. There isn't really like anything comparable to wounds per se. But rather than doing that, you can actually end up with like you essentially buy new cards with experience points. You earn experience in that, and that translates into better cards. Is the way that they handle experiences directly. But you can also earn negative experience in this, and you have to undo that by earning more experience to a +1 and a -1 wipe each other out. So
well, Trent, all I have to say about your review is just shame on you, because like I had no idea this game existed, and everything about it has led me to believe that we have a competent designer who's maybe getting to finally, or maybe getting to, you know, show his own perspective and his own take on the systems that he stayed largely within a confinement for, and really didn't. I didn't feel like there was all that much Andrew Parks, all that much of any designer for that matter, evident in Star Trek Frontiers in my experience with it. Whereas it just felt like, you know, a very slight tweaking of.
It is. Definitely. It's a slight tweak of Mage Knight.
And what you said here makes me think like I really need to see this, and you know, I'm confident that this designer has put some due diligence in here and has, you know, some very intriguing ideas for certain in his other games already out. So like I said, shame on you, because now this one has become on my radar, and I just got a game, Trent, and I haven't even played it yet, and now I've got another one that's now on the list. So how dare you?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think if you like Mage Knight, at the very least, you'll find some stuff to appreciate here.
Well, very cool. Okay, so Mage Knight is definitely one of the games that we're going to be talking about as maybe being a sort of pie in the sky. When I say that, you know, you're the game that you work towards, the game that is, if you try it right at the beginning, with the exception of one crazy individual that I have no excuse for, you're probably going to end up frustrated, confused, and maybe not even think that the game is for you, like yours truly here. I tried to play Mage Knight. I even learned it from like videos from Ricky Royal, who did an awesome job explaining it. It just was one that I just felt like, man, there's just so many things going on there. I just don't know that I'm ready for this. And I ended up getting rid of it. And then Andy, of course, who I was referring to, shows it to me. Well, it doesn't show it to me, but just plays it with me and is there to sort of help me manage all the systems that were just becoming too overwhelming. And I end up like, no, this game is amazing. It's totally worth my time. It's just a really tough one to crack into. It's a tough nut to crack. And, you know, it doesn't have to be Andy style. It doesn't have to be, as Andy likes to put it, in Andy's own words, going from...
I don't know what you're trying to want Andy to say.
He said it, but I don't know that his mic is on, or I don't know what happened. But I saw him mouth the words Catan to Mage Knight.
Yeah, that's what I said. Sorry, I had mute on.
Yeah, he said it. I saw the words. It just didn't happen. So
well, or on the other side, hey, I want to try 18XX. Joe goes, well, I have 18OE. Yeah, that'll work.
And that was before I'd already been like, you know, let's try 18XX with, you know, just jumping into the full game of 1830. So, which I think is probably how most people learn 18XX. But you know, and that maybe a trial by fire is a good thing to do. You know, where you're just gonna you're either gonna know that you like it or you're gonna know that it's not for you. But I do think that experience has a lot more to it, and I think that's why we're gonna talk about games that can train you to play other games. So since this was your idea, could you start us off with what you see as being, you know, like a game that's worthy of working towards, and maybe the games that you would train yourself or train other players to get to that point?
Well, I think, I mean, it's more of a matter of if you list a particular popular game that's very heavy, I can almost always think of something that's like a simpler version that might work you up to it if you're intimidated by the length or complexity. So we were just talking about Mage Knight, so let's start there. The one that I immediately think of when I think of it, this is a simpler Mage Knight that gives a lot of the same ideas across, is Legends of Andor. Because Mage Knight feels incredibly puzzly to me whenever I'm playing it. Legends of Andor is a similar type of puzzle, but a lot simpler. And a side point to Legends of Andor, I feel like if you're getting Legends of Andor and that's clicking in your head, try Mage Knight. That's a good step towards it.
Nice.
Yeah. For another example, if you're trying to get into 18XX and it feels overwhelming, try Tesla versus Edison. It's the closest I've ever played to an 18XX in an hour. It's got a lot of the same feel of it. You're owning shares in companies and things like that. And there's things going on, but the map is really simple. And the mechanisms are really straightforward, and it plays out in about an hour, especially with the expansion. The expansion's sweet. I mean, it really depends on what game you're looking for. There are a lot of good... If a game is really good and really heavy, you can rest assured there's something out there that captures 80% of the game in 50% of the time, or something akin to that. I just named 2 examples. What else we got here? Let's name some others.
Okay.
I'll let you guys go. Yeah, I'll go at the end because I've got kind of a little different spin on it, but definitely still along those lines. TC.
Oh yeah, my experience with this was my my initial play of Here I Stand, and yeah, just going into that cold with a group of people was
What were some of the reasons What were some of the things that made it like a difficult experience?
Well, what made it difficult was that I thought I had a grip on the rules and I thought I could teach it well. There was just, I mean, it was asymmetrical. There were people who didn't really know how a card-driven war game played, and it was, it was not a good experience. But I loved it. I saw the potential of the game, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and half the people there enjoyed it too. Thankfully, my wife was one of them. But yeah, every time I go somewhere and people are like, yeah, I really heard Here I Stand, or hear you play Here I Stand or Virgin Queen, I'd really like to play. I'm like, okay. Here's what's got to happen. You have to do homework for this thing. You have to prepare for it. And I have like on a file, I think I still have it somewhere. I know I have it in my box of Here I Stand. It's a primer for the game. It's like an article GMT published way back in the day. It's like 5 or 6 pages. I'm like, you need to read this. But I just went, no. You have to read this to know. You have to know these basics going into it. And if you haven't played a card-driven game before, and you have someone you can play with, have someone I can play with. Okay, you need to play Twilight Struggle, or you need to play Washington's War, or
Washington's War is exactly what I would have named.
Yeah, and then so you got to understand how these cards work, how the combat works with the dice, and and just get that foundation there, because Washington's War, not knowing it is like, it can be a long game. Here I Stand, not knowing it is a day. Okay. And if you don't have that type of investment going into it, you're not going to get like the maximum amount you can out of the game when you're playing it. Now, that being said, I fully believe that there's a game you like and it looks interesting to you. I fully believe that like 9 times out of 10, you're smart enough to know it, to figure it out. You should just buy the sucker, dive in and see if you like it or not. But when I'm teaching a game, I want people to have the best time they can, because, if it's my game and I'm teaching it, it's incumbent on me to give a good game experience to a large extent. So Here I Stand is the one that I don't know if I'd call it training, but it does take significant prep time and preparation if you're going to play the game. And if you're saying this to someone who's kind of interested in it, and they kind of balk at that, they're not going to be the person to play an 8 to 10 hour game like that with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost like it's not even just so much training sometimes. I don't want to make it sound like elitist, that this is going to come off that way. Yeah. That you're almost like, let's try this one first, because, this one, we can both kind of decide at the end that we can part our separate ways. But if we start here, like, you're already in, and you're going to have enough time to decide you don't like the game, and then you're still going to be expected to finish it.
Yeah. So, I don't want you to explain to the 5 other people who have committed to this that you want out 30 minutes into it, because that's not good and that's not cool.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned
that's something I kind of wanted to resonate with there, because I really think this idea of a training game or something like that is highly dependent upon the teacher and the person who's learning. Because if you have someone that is nuts like me and really wants to dive in and get into something meaty, I truly don't believe they have to have training wheels, but they have to have a few aspects of their personality that's going to help with this. They have to be be competitive, but not so competitive that they're going to be miserable if they're not, in the running at the beginning. They have to be okay with, like, a lot of brain burn, a lot of trying to figure it out. But you also, I think, have to have a teacher that understands how to coach people and what they're looking for. So I've often taught people their first heavy or medium game. And one of the first things I do is, okay, what are you comfortable with? How much do you want me to help you? Like, how much coaching would you like? And so if I see they're getting stuck, I'm like, what are you thinking about right now? What are you trying to do? And then I'll point out some possibilities. I think if you do things like that, you can bridge that gap a little bit better. So you don't have to take so many steps if you've got the right personality and the right teacher. I think the danger comes for someone if they're trying to get into their first heavy game and maybe they're jumping that gap a little too much, is when they get into a game with a very competitive person and the person teaches them all the rules, basically is, okay, figure it out. And they don't coach them.
Big problem with your whole thing here, Andy, is one key thing you're mentioning
Yeah,
is that you're assuming that there's a teacher available.
that is true. No,
That's a big assumption. So
yeah, but
Good point.
and that's where I said if generally I won't. Also, for me, I won't take someone into something I think that's going to be really heavy if I don't have a really good handle on that game. Like John Company is one, for example. I'm like, I was really careful about who I wanted to play that with because I didn't know it well enough to coach people through it. But yeah, you are right. I think if you have a teacher, it helps. But
and really, Andy, your advice is good specifically for the teachers out there. You know, if you're a game teacher, this is good. Like that was really good to go off of. But like Trent said, if you don't have anywhere to start from, then you probably, would benefit from starting somewhere. And I think you mentioned something that was mentioned in our comments here, TC, that I really wanted to echo, and that is you mentioned Twilight Struggle or Washington's War. Now, I've never played Washington's War, but Twilight Struggle is by itself a pretty heavy game and could be considered like an end of the road game itself. But there was that 13 Days game, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that really does a great job introducing players to managing several different interlocking systems together with the core structure of a card-driven game, where generally card-driven games work to where you've got an event on a card and some sort of operation points, and some games make you choose between them, and other games have other rules to it. But I think that that's a really great starting point to get yourself into. I mean, you're talking about a game, like 45 minutes, 13 days, or even less. If you lose, but it's really like it captivates. Like as Trent says, 80% of Twilight Struggle, and probably less than that, because there's a lot of systems in Twilight Struggle that 13 Days ignores, but it supplants them with interesting ones. And so I'd say maybe closer to 60% of the game, but you're talking about 25% of the playtime.
Yeah. I like 13 Days too. That's a good one. And another thing I want to echo with the teacher thing is that there are several game groups. Well, playing heavy games is a pretty exclusive thing, to be quite honest. And if I'm looking like, okay, I really want to try this game, I only know like 2 people in town have it because there was only like 180 copies of this thing made. I know going into these games that some of these people aren't the greatest teachers. They'll like give you like a really brief scope of the game and then mention the other things that can happen after they pull it off and tell you this is a thing that can happen.
They call that the Joe by the way.
Yeah.
There's a name for that.
So, I'm kind of, when I first go into a game like that, and, I just know the group when I go in, I'm like, yeah, there's going to be all these weird exceptions that these people are going to know. I'm going to try to be competitive, but I'm here just to learn the game and see if it's something I want to invest in later down the road. So be aware of that. That again, saying that that like Trent said, if there's a good teacher, and sometimes there's not, and sometimes you've got to take it for the team just to see if you like something or not.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great one to talk about. Now, I've got, like I said, what I'm going to be talking about is almost like I'm going to call mine kind of like the evolution of games. So I'm going to save that for just one more. I have a question for you, TC, and you guys go ahead and like mention other games whenever you want. But I was going to say like Arkham Horror, right? Or Eldritch Horror, but like these are games that are, like really thick rule books, right? You're talking like 40, like really lots of rules. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but the game itself is, fairly well simplistic. Now, does that mean that you can just kick right into Arkham Horror? But what if you're like learning it for the first time and you've never played anything? Is there any game to train you for Arkham Horror? Is there a necessity first, and is there a game?
Jeez, for Arkham Horror, I mean, I don't know. That game is such a dice chucker, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing I could recommend to get you ready from Arkham Horror is just a role-playing game. I mean, have you played Dungeons and Dragons where like a random die roll just completely kills the character and you got wiped off the map? Yeah. And the dungeon master was evil? Yeah. Well, imagine that, but the game's just doing that to you 24/7. And it's evil and it's going to kick your butt. But the enjoyment you have out of that is not necessarily playing well. It's just experiencing the game with other people. And then, of course, you get to the rule book and it's like, well, this rule book so big. I'm like, well, first of all, the rule book was published way back in the day when Fantasy Flight didn't know how to organize jack crap. and there's like errata to the errata to the errata to the errata, depending on which expansion to the expansion to the expansion you're using. So it's even I don't even know half the rules. I'm like, I gotta look through this 30-page errata thing to maybe, and he's like, you know what? It's a cooperative game. How do you feel? Can we all agree on how this thing is going to execute? Okay, cool. Let's keep going. It's going to kill you anyway. Just how bad is it going to be?
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't. Honestly, I think just being a playing Dungeons and Dragons, being a role player would be the easiest one to prepare you for a game like Arkham Horror. I definitely wouldn't recommend. And another thing is like, do you like controlling your games? It's like this all goes back to Rex. Rex to me is a game that takes all the modern Euro standards of the day and basically gives it the finger. Like you want games that are safe and you can't die? Well, you don't want to play Rex. It is a relic from another time. It's got blind bidding. It's got, catastrophic cards that can wipe you out if you play them right. It's and it can be wildly unbalanced depending on what alliances form and if you're ready, if you can combat them or not. And I've had several games of Rex where they're like, well, that's just, it's funny, you didn't tell me that could happen in the rules, or, I didn't know that could happen, or you didn't say this, and I didn't know that would happen. I get whopped off the board and can't come, and to me, that's just funny. I'm like, yeah, welcome to Rex. Well, I'm never playing this again. Yeah, but you'll never forget playing it. I've got people who we played it at Gamestorm. I had a guy walk by and go, "Oh my God, you're still playing that? I remember that playing 5 years ago. I hated it." Yeah, but you still remember it.
That's what TC got from what he said. That's awesome, TC. I'm so glad that you enjoyed that, man. You got to play your annual game.
And that's part of the charm. Like the game we played up at Gamestorm, I explained the way the dials worked. I'm like, it's the number you pick plus your leader, and the highest number wins. Well, one of the guys who was new didn't hear that. He thought it was like the number of chits plus the number on your dial plus the leader. And I gave an example 5 times. And so he moved in 14 army units, put 2 on his dial, and lost everything. He shot himself in the foot with the bazooka, and he was throwing cards. I was laughing so hard I couldn't see. I'm like, don't worry about it. These things happen. And he recovered quite nicely, but that's a lot like Arkham Horror. You just have to know that going in. What can I do to prepare you for it? Play the game once? I don't know.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah.
If you're a rational person, I think for me, for people who ask, hey, I want to play 18xx, what should I do? Almost invariably, I would just say, I try to lead them to either 1846 or 1889, and I think you play those, you build up. If they're not, to the point that you think they're ready for that, you can easily, go with a Poseidon or even acquire to get them to use to the idea of stocks and partial ownerships and things like that, and build up to it. Even for me, I would say, I've been on the forums where a lot of people say 1830 is a great first play experience for an 18xx. I fundamentally don't agree with that. I think 1889 is, in my opinion, the go-to game to work into the system.
Well, and 1889 is basically the same rules as 1830. You're not really going to have many differences when people do learn 1830. You don't have much more to explain than 1830, but it all happens where you don't have several rounds of things building up and then they happen. A lot of times they happen, and it's a round or two, and then you're now into a changing phase of the game. So you at least get to sort of experience the game, and see as it moves. I don't know though.
Well, 1889 is also just a little bit more forgiving in the sense, not the rules, but in the track set. 1830, if you're playing old school Avalon Hill 1830, it can be very scripted. So if you're new and you're like, I'm going to start this railway, okay, I'll build this way. And experts can sit at the table, look at you and go, you idiot, you just ruined my game. And it's almost like Puerto Rico like that. Or it's like, well, I want to start the Canadian railway. And everyone's just like, your game's over. Whereas 1889, there's a lot more viable options. It's a little more obvious what companies will probably do well and won't. But it has almost the identical rule set to 1830. So it's just a really good jumping off point. Like, I really agree with the people who said 1846 is a great intro to 18XX for people who want to play 1846. Because the rules are fairly different than your standard game. But I think it's a good
because like 1846 doesn't really prepare you for other 18XX games. It's just its own like. I think there's just a lot of players that don't go in many other directions than 1846.
I think 1846 is a good one, a really good one. If you've got a lot of Eurogamer friends who want to try an 18XX, then that's probably the better one to go with.
I always, if you ever ask me, especially my convention, they're like, well, I don't know what, I heard you play 18XX. Why do you think? I go, you need to go to the basement and check out this game of 18OE going on. Just stand there and watch it and see if that's anything you'd be interested in. Well, how do you know which one it is? It's the table with the professional briefcase of poker chips. You can't miss the table. And it's the whole damn table. And then the thing that jumps out at me when people want to learn 18XX is that I gotta find out really quick if they have the temperament for it. That's huge. You got to be able to have the temperament for a long slog like that and just a constant beatdown. And I find Age of Steam to be a pretty good indicator of that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If they can endure a game of Age of Steam where they're just taking loans out and they're struggling to claw out with money and enjoying that struggle, you're like, yeah, you're going to love an 18XX game.
Well, and you get an Age of Steam player and you know when you play an Age of Steam game with someone who's ripe for Age of Steam and 18XX. When I introduced Age of Steam to a guy, and near the end of the game, he's like, I hate all of you. I'm having a great time, by the way, but I hate all of you.
And that's when you say, you are a prime material for an 18XX game.
That's when, as a trained gamer, mentally in the back of your head, you're going, yes!
Well, for my kind of spin on this, I guess I kind of almost looked at that sort of like theory of evolution poster, with all the different like organisms at different stages. And this is not to make a comment on certain games being superior than other ones or being like an evolution necessarily, but like, just so you can know, it's not that I would never want to go back to these games that are earlier on. It's just that this would be a good place for you to start, and you'll at least have an idea of what kind of progression maybe to follow. And so, like, for example, I wanted to start with deck building, and much like what Trent said earlier, the ending point here is Mage Knight. But I didn't, when he mentioned Legend of Andor, it's like, yeah, that is kind of like a good little training game for that one. But I looked at Mage Knight for its deck building, I guess, which is only one part of a larger puzzle, and that's why I put it at the end of this list, which starts out with Star Realms as a deck building game. Then I think you can go up to Legendary. Now, Legendary is a little bit like more going on than Star Realms, but it's that same sort of idea where you just like sort of vomit your hand onto the table, and you don't really think much about all sorts of different stuff going on. It's more about just buying cards and less about choosing how to play your hand and choosing how to use things. Dominion, though, adds definitely like, you have to choose sort of make choices about how you're going to pick cards and how you're going to get yourself the right composition of actions, because you have things that you have to manage in the actual hand management part of the game. So there's more there going on, though people consider it like the sort of, the deck building game. Now there's more stuff going on to Dominion. You want to just play a game about deck building, definitely go earlier than this in my scope. Then I would say Eminent Domain, because Eminent Domain takes deck building and adds that role selection to it that just busts my brain. And I'm not the only person who's made terrible choices in Eminent Domain that's got themselves into this horrible position where they're like, well, I took that card because I want the action, and now I can't do anything with this deck. It sucks, which I think is just hilarious. So, anyway, it's one that definitely moves a step up from there, and then moving even further up, Core Worlds is a game that just, you can see sort of like the path that you're going to be going towards the entire game, and it really just has an epic scope for a deck builder, though it is still primarily a deck builder with lots and lots of culling your deck to get it efficient. And then finally going from Core Worlds into Mage Knight, though, there's definitely elements in Mage Knight that are not present in any of these other games. If you want to just, start and watch deck building go from the beginning to the end, that's what I would say. Anybody have any comments about the evolution of deck building?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. The only thing I would throw on that is that I like deck building a lot, and so does my wife, but she did not click with Eminent Domain because she thought it was boring using planets just for rocks. But that's just a personal preference. I've rather enjoyed Eminent Domain quite a bit. But yeah, that's
the expansions add a lot more stuff to it. So if you just play base game, I don't think your wife was alone in feeling that it was kind of a flat system. It was a cool system, but a flat execution. I don't know.
And then, but with Mage Knight in particular, there is deck building such a it's a part of the game. There's a lot more to make. I mean, you guys know there's a lot more to make.
It really
just
is
building decks, but
because I mean, a lot of times in deck builders, like I feel like in Mage Knight, you're going to be more adding cards to your deck at like sort of different intervals as opposed to
every other level up or something.
It's not like you're purchasing them. It's not like deck building is that baked into the system. I can definitely see how that would maybe even be disputed as being like that much of a deck builder. I don't know. It's an interesting exploration. I do think that it's a good place to end up in, even if it's not necessarily not every part of it is addressed in that deck building line. Next up, I had one that was kind of like dice games. And this one really, I struggled with because I was like, I don't know. I kind of wanted to start with, some sort of Yahtzee variant. But, even from what I've written down here from my notes, I'm gonna say that I just don't think that there's really – I feel like, there's, a continental drift, a continent apart, between any sort of variant on Yahtzee and what I would call modern dice games. So I'm just going to start this off with jumping into modern dice games with a really recent game, Rajas of the Ganges, which mixes very simple worker placement with dice as resources and has some systems for being able to mitigate those dice. But, when it comes down to it, it's kind of like Stone Age, only you roll your dice prior to taking the actions. So I don't consider Stone Age a dice game. It's just dice are just being used as a random number generator. It's not really being used as a component that works into the system. Outside of, it's not just being used for chances. It actually it determines options. So moving on, and that's kind of how I guess I make this decision, this line in the sand in my own head between modern dice games and more Yahtzee variant, more like using dice as just resolution. So start from there. Then I would say go try Castles of Burgundy. Castle of Burgundy is definitely one that can be difficult to learn from the rulebook, but you're going to be using dice to take actions, and you can mess with what those dice do, but it's a really cool exploration, and I would say fits kind of nicely in there after you kind of know how the dice work. Move up from there to Voyages of Marco Polo, which really gives you the ability to plan out a huge trip where it's really difficult to make to make all the different stops you want to make on your way and to get in the right places, so you can then use dice. Dice really drive the system a lot more. I mean, they do definitely in Castle Burgundy, but you have a little bit more, I would say, just choices over how you're going to break up your dice and what you're going to use them towards. And it just feels a little bit more of a system that you have more working room in, which means definitely more depth. And definitely you can really suck in Voices of Marco Polo. Finally, ending this all up with Trois. And you could maybe say Trois, or you could even say I don't know if I want to go as far as to say War of the Ring, or one of those systems that uses dice at the beginning of a round, and then sort of to determine what actions are available. I don't know. That
Frontier.
Alien Frontier, yeah, or Euphoria.
Andy, yeah, that was like lighting a flaming bag of crap on my doorstep. Thank you so much, dude. The thing about Trois that makes it different and makes it really up here is just at the end here is that you have so much interaction and the ability to use all the dice are sort of communal And that to me just really ups it to that next level where you really want, like, I think that's why it belongs at the end of this sort of line. And I know that it's not super far to get, but anyone who's like, if you've tried to teach somebody new to games it's yeah. I mean, it has elements where the game can certainly come to bite you. It has elements of sort of punishment where you got to fight these sort of invader dice and have these events to have to manage. It's but the way that the game handles it is in a way that's fair once you get what's going on, but it's definitely not one you'd want to start with.
No.
Well, that was kind of a few different little evolutions here. I guess a couple of them. I tried to do one for Agricola, to kind of end with like this giant worker placement game. And I wanted to put Agricola somewhere on it, but like I wanted also to be able to sort of recommend the games on this list for at least, some sort of merit. And I felt like I was going to be starting with a game that I just, I put Fabled Fruit on here just because it's so simple. You take, it's just the most simple, like you take a single action every single round with like this worker that you just have to move around. So it's like the most simple worker placement, and it's just recipe fulfillment. There's really not much else to it aside from these card effects that are somewhat different from one another, but a lot of them kind of just are different variations on the same idea of just getting stuff and turning it into points eventually. So you can start there. You could also play Lords of Waterdeep if you want to, but I would almost say, skip over that one and supplant it with Raiders of the North Sea.
Yep. That's what I was waiting for you to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Lords of Water, once again, you just recipe fulfillment, and it's just not that interesting. I mean, you could maybe supplant, like, say, Lords of Waterdeep / Stone Age, because both of those games are really just simple. Put your workers out there. All the different systems that are there are present in other games, but I really don't think they're explored to their deep, to an extent that makes them interesting for me to recommend. But if you're new, certainly try those games on your journey, and if you like them, then like who am I to tell you that they're not great games? Because I just they're just not for me. They're not ones I'm going to keep back to. Like, I do really like Ridge of the North Sea though. Then up from there, I would say that if you play Ridge of the North Sea, I think you know enough to go into a game like Agricola. I think you might want to start with one of the looser Uwe Rosenberg games, but those tend to almost always go like longer. And I feel really hesitant to recommend Caverna. But, like, to get you to Agricola, especially if you're worried about a system biting you and you don't want to take punishment, because I know that can really turn players off. If they don't feel they understand a game, they're getting punished by the game, that can really turn players off. Well, then try, one of the looser worker placement games by Uwe Rosenberg. Fields of Arla, if you've got 2 players, Feast for Odin. We're still talking longer games, but these are fairly simple, straightforward systems. And then to take it to another level, I would say, like, try playing Tricarion.
Tricarion I love Tricarion.
Yeah, I mean, or Dungeon Lords. I mean, like, because it's like you're doing worker placement, but it's like you're doing it all at once by, like, sort of programming workers to have to go do something. It takes that system. I don't even know if you're starting to break into other systems at this point, but, like, it does feel like I would want to have a grasp on action drafting before I went to play either Dungeon Lords or Tricarion. But I do put them both on here. I think Tricarion sort of like maybe gets you ready for that sort of Vital Lacerda. So you could maybe even like, consider Tricarion a supplant for, if I was a bigger fan of them, maybe I would say like, Vital Lacerda games as interchange that here, because I do think that a lot of his games use that sort of action drafting, but your action drafting part of the game is very simple. It's the systems that interlock with it that really form the base of the gameplay. I was going to
say, his games are simple. Vinos is simple. You move a worker, you take an action.
Yeah, exactly, Andy. They're simple. And Andy's that terrible feature that tells you, like,
interconnection between any of those actions that's going to trigger off each other at all.
Right?
No. That's how Andy teaches Genius. He just says, this game is simple. You place a worker and take an action. Who's ready to start?
Yeah, Lisboa, draw a card, play a card. All good.
For sure. Well, that was just kind of a few different ideas of some of the evolutions that I've identified, and I think those are 3 pretty big currents. I also considered doing drafting, but for some reason, when I was thinking of drafting, I just ended with Agricola, because I feel like as far as drafting goes, I think it's more of a vehicle, like a means to an end, than it really is like a game in and of itself. So, I guess I should say Agricola / Terraforming Mars, because I think it has a fairly similar like structure where it's like you draft at the beginning of the round, and like what you have access to is very, very much drives the gameplay in that round. So
I think to kind of like finish up my thoughts on sort of the train gaming thing, I think there's a very good progression of games. If you think you know someone that might be interested in them, you don't have to jump right to 18xx or even Age of Steam. You can start out with a very simple Paris Connection, go from Paris Connection to a Chicago Express or another Winsome. If you don't think Age of Steam would be, it's too tight and nasty for them, you could go with Steam, Railways of the World. So there's a lot of progression in that area you could do as well.
Yeah, I think that Age of Steam is a great one to mention towards that. Like your cube rails. Like I wanted to let you handle that, Andy, because I was like, I don't want to touch the 18xx, but I do feel like you could start somewhere around like I'd start to puke a little bit in my mouth saying it, but San Francisco Cable Car with its expansion that adds like stocks. Because I just like, simple.
Paris Connection.
Yeah,
there you go.
The better
Paris
one.
Connection. And I've never played that one as a cube rail. And then maybe, continue to ride that cube rail up towards Iberian Rails, and I know that I'm like
Chicago
the Iberian
Express,
Rails guy.
Iberian Rails. There's lots of those.
I would say start with Paris Connection if you're wanting to play cube rails from the beginning to the end. Paris Connection, then Chicago Express, which is your standard, and then I think Iberian Rails is where you start to see it really get crazy. But then you can keep that going, and I do think Age of Steam has quite a bit in common with the way that they work. It's just now you're adding really track laying and like an auction to.
Yeah, well, that's where I think you judge the person. You either go Railways of the World, Steam, or Age of Steam based on the individual. If they like a nasty game, Age of Steam, go right to that. Skip Railways of the World, skip Steam. If you're not quite sure, play it safe, go Steam. If they're a little bit, more Carry Berry kind of thing, Railways of the World.
Now, you play Age of Steam, and if they don't come back, it's no major loss.
No, there's that too, yeah.
Well, I would like to just interject. There's a reason why the Arkham Living card game topped Arkham Horror board game for me in my top 10 list. And it has to do with my wife. Now, Carissa hates constructible card games. Magic destroyed her. She swore she would never do a constructible card game ever again. She would never build a deck. She swore it off. It's dumb. I don't want to chase it. And I never again. Never again. And Trent, we just got finished playing the which one was it? The Phantom of Truth, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of that game, she turned to me and said, "You know what, TC? I want to build a Lola deck because I really like playing Lola, and I think I could do that." Now that's huge. I mean, that goes from a game system she loathed to a game that she found she liked. So if you get to like a train game or something like that, or game, and you don't like the system, don't give up on it. Okay. There might be an iteration of that you really take to and really enjoy, because I've seen it happen. So don't let, if you tried the Age of Steam or whatever, and you're like, I don't like it, keep going with train games. And there's going to be a train game you're going to enjoy. You just got to find the right iteration of it that's going to click for you. Because I saw it happen with my wife and deck building, and not deck building, but deck construction, because that's different than the deck building game. So don't let some of that stuff intimidate you. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, I agree. I think within most systems, there's something you can enjoy. Like deck building's never been one of my particular favorite mechanisms, but I found I really liked Valley of the Kings. Some people were talking about in the chat. That one I really enjoyed. And
Mage Knight, you enjoyed it, that implementation of it in Mage Knight.
Yeah, Mage Knight. I've always liked deck building as sort of a secondary mechanism. Mm-hmm. But as a primary mechanism, like Valley of the Kings really did it for me. I really enjoyed that one. For some reason, it clicked. I think if you're talking train games and sort of cube rail games, there's going to be a lot of people that would hate Chicago Express for how dry it is, but Iberian Rails, just throwing in asymmetrical character cards and player powers, all of a sudden it's like, hey, this one's fun. I like this one.
I do think that there's like a different, like, knowing who your audience is important, if you're trying to sort of push it onto others. But I also do think that, what TC says is really huge. You know, that just because you didn't like the way something was executed once doesn't mean that you're never going to enjoy it, right? And I didn't mean to like sort of assume that was what I was, you know, that's going to happen if you find yourself out of your league. You know, you might feel like, you know, this is a great game. Let me come back to this sometime. You know, and I definitely feel like I've witnessed other players when I've been teaching them have that sort of a reaction, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, it's
This
fine.
is just.
Yeah, I just wanted to iterate. Don't give up. I mean,
For sure. I really like that too. I like the idea, TC. Yeah, just keep going with it, right? Even if you feel like here's the other thing. Like, I don't want you to think of these different paths that I said. Like, oh, you go on the evolution of deck building. Like, you have to go through it linear, and that if you dislike one step, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep going. You know, that's one of the biggest things. Like, don't limit yourself by that. It might just be that you don't like that system, and then, you know, maybe the next one up. Maybe, you know, if you like the game enough, no matter how you got there isn't going to be that big of a deal. You know, how you got there isn't going to matter once you feel like you enjoy the game enough to put the effort in to continue to, you know, to pursue it, you know, I mean,
I never thought I'd get back into a constructible card game ever again. But then Arkham hit, and now I'm like butt deep in Legend of the Five Rings. And if you had told me that like 4 years ago, I'd have been like, "You're insane. You are nuts. That's never going to happen."
And I think sort of one final thing I want to leave with too is, we've been talking this evolution as if that's a path that everyone should take or whatever. There are a lot of people that want to play light games, and like, I don't want to play, and there's nothing wrong with that. So light games don't have to be a step on the way to something else and then you get rid of it. For some people, light games, party games, quiz games, that's where it ends for them, and that's perfectly fine. Really what we're talking about is the people who want to get to kind of that more meatier, crunchy aspect, but are just a little more intimidated by things than people who are insane like I am, I guess. I don't know.
You're talking to a group of people who are like, enjoyed a first game where they got massacred. I'm like, oh, that was cool. You know, we are probably the outliers when it comes to this kind of thing.
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe I'm bringing this back down to earth a little bit here, because I definitely haven't as many stories of games that overwhelmed me that I loved as I do of games that overwhelmed me. And that's where the story ends, because I didn't want any more. So there are quite a bit of other games that were listed here. I mean, like, Andy, when it came to wargaming, right? Like, the game that you recently reviewed, Maneuver, could kind of work for like sort of
getting some basic concepts.
Is it card driven more, or is it more like
card driven?
Tiny card driven.
Tiny card driven. But yeah, you have to use cards to activate units to do things and whatnot. Another one I've got, but I haven't had a chance to play yet, is the Conflict of Heroes series. Is supposed to be a really nice.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That's supposed to be a really nice war game to get into.
Yeah,
by Mechanic Games.
Yeah, so I've got that sitting around
as well. I've heard that one seems to seek to do kind of the same idea, and then you can even add Cthulhu to it if you're one of those people who thinks Cthulhu added to something is anything but an abomination.
I didn't even mention like 1812 and 1770, those Birth of a Nation series from Academy
those
Games.
Are supposed to be really good.
Those I think would help towards that Hex Encounter games, which might maybe they would go a little bit before Conflict of Heroes on here.
Those are fantastic intro war games, and they are phenomenal teaching tools. As teachers, you should look into it. They are really good.
Yeah. I also see on here there's like, you know, sort of the evolution. Somebody did the evolution of negotiation games.
I think I threw that one on there, so I may be dead wrong on it because I don't have that much experience.
Oh, okay. Starting like with something like the Resistance, you know, like a social deduction game that it's very simple core, up to the Sheriff of Nottingham, where you add like a few more systems there and you make it more of a, you know, a game of BS. I can definitely see how Dead of Winter with the hidden traders could be. Chinatown just strips everything and really becomes just nothing but negotiation. Then Andy puts on John Company before Diplomacy, and I would almost argue that those could go in either order depending on whether or not you're willing to, like, you know, go through the joy/suffering that is a Sierra Madre rulebook, which is really beautiful as a piece of literature, but very difficult to actually learn to play with.
Honestly, I don't know if anything can actually prepare you for a game of diplomacy till you actually experience it. To be honest. I mean, you go into that knowing it's going to be, you just got to go in knowing that that's going to be a wreck. That's going to be,
I feel like there's like some kind of way to like make money in a game of diplomacy by like passing out numbers to local therapists when you're done.
Like the ambulance chasing lawyers.
Like, this is your game of diplomacy. Here's your complimentary 20% off your first visit to psychological services of whatever city.
But what if my therapist was the person that inflicted the pain on me?
Yeah, and we are not responsible for any destroyed friendships that come out of this game.
My favorite one of the diplomacy is just the story of the guy playing in the tournament who got betrayed and just started bawling and like wailing at the tournament hall, like just collapsed there and couldn't take it.
That's terrifying, Andy.
But you said you wouldn't do it. Yeah, welcome to diplomacy. You thought you were my friend. Well, outside the game I am. But you're Germany and I don't like you very much.
Yeah. Well, Trent, did we explore the different areas you were hoping to go into in sort of talking about training games? And is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Nope, I think we nailed it. Pretty much covered everything I thought of.
Goodness. All right. Well, yeah, there's some really interesting, talking about how to get to the end would be really, really cool. It was a really interesting discussion. I appreciate all the different angles you guys helped to bring to get there. And it was interesting, Andy, to hear from you because I was wondering if you weren't just going to sort of write the topic off as like, no.
No, because I recognize the vast majority of people have much more rational ways of approaching a situation.
I think you're not alone in your side there, Andy. I think there's definitely others in our group that feel the same way, either in part or entirely. So, all right. Well, that's our topic, and now let's move into our hype section, which I guess I will go ahead and once again break the rules. I kind of switched it up a little bit here. I had listed that I was going to be hyping the Seventh Continent. I just got that in. I kind of referred to that a little bit earlier. But instead of talking about that one, I have to bring this up because I'm just so thrilled. Martin Wallace has designed the most interesting explorations of deck building ever. How could I forget to put that on my list of deck builders?
You failed!
I know, yeah. Supplant that one for like Mage Knight, or supplant it, put it somewhere next to like Core Worlds, because that is really a system that's just crazy in how it forces you to consider elements of deck building games like taking on cards that help you, it's like they're helping you maybe points wise, helping you maybe get to a certain place, but then you end up with just like stuck with these places that are just clogging up your hand. It's such an interesting exploration. So if that's giving you an idea of what I think about Martin Wallace's ability to craft interesting explorations of deck building games, he is making a game that's called Lincoln, and it is about the Civil War. It is basically, it's a deck building, card driven game. Now, it doesn't necessarily mention deck building, I guess I should say, because let me just read this so I don't say this wrong. It's a fast-paced, light, so Andy's going to love it, two-player, card-driven strategy war game set in the American Civil War that allows you to refight the entire American Civil War at a strategic level in under 2 hours, point-to-point movement and area control, hidden army strengths. So hidden army strengths, that would be something that's different from Few Acres for sure. Decks of cards providing the command choices, and luck, there are no dice. So I wonder if you're it doesn't say anything anywhere in here about deck building. So we're not necessarily going to be working with that. It's going to be more of it sounds like a drawing, maybe kind of like Twilight Struggle. I'm not really sure, but I'm just really thrilled. Martin Wallace, when he deals with a historical topic, seems to really be able to get people to appreciate it. On his more fantasy-based games, I think that people don't latch onto as much, and I think that sometimes makes the game at its core suffer unjustly. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but let's just say that Lincoln sounds really, really cool. What do you guys have to say about that?
It's Martin Wallace. I'll play it. I'm Dan.
Let's do it.
Well, Andy was out with the light and fast pace. Andy would prefer, like, if he was going to write a blurb, it would be like slow and difficult and hard and heavy. And are you still
Painful.
there?
The best games are the one where you're questioning whether you need to go take Advil at the end.
All right. Well, going from the Martin Wallace two-player game of Lincoln, which I did an audible on at the last minute, let's go ahead and move into another historical game coming from the good old PAX guys that I think we've heard a little bit from. I think from Trent, but Andy, let's hear your take. Hear your take.
Yeah. So I'm hyping Pax Emancipation, which is basically a game about dealing with slavery, because I don't know, that's a topic that we need to
but it's also not like the other PAX games where you're going to be using slavery to your advantage.
No. This is supposed to be, I think, from what I've read, I think it's supposed to be basically the goal is to progress civilization to the point you get rid of slavery.
Is it actually cooperative, or is it?
It's cooperative or competitive, but if it's competitive, it's more like we're all trying to abolish or get rid of slavery and improve civilization, but it's kind of like who did it the best kind of thing. But yeah, from my understanding is in no scenario are you helping slavery along or something like that. But it looks neat. It's got a few trappings of the normal PAX thing, like some card rows and stuff. I've seen an image of it, and like the image and what they have there and what's going on. Like I have no idea how this thing is going to play, which basically means that's why I have to have it.
Yeah, like kind of looking at PAX Renaissance when it was coming out. You're like, I have no clue. It looks good.
Yeah, I have no clue. Well, and here's the argument I always use, because there's always the forums. It's like, should I buy this Sierra Madre game? The answer to that question is always yes, because if you hate it, in less than a year, you can sell it at triple the value. And I wish I was kidding about that, but I'm not. Like, they go up in price fast because they're limited print runs.
They skyrocket pretty quick. I was trying to find a copy of PAX Premiere and forget about it.
Nope. Even worse with the expansion. But yeah, no, everyone, I'll see the threads. It's like, should I get Sierra? But yes, you should. It's all, but anyway, no, it's the next one in the PAX one. It's an interesting theme, in the sense it's one that you don't see tackled too often because you got to handle it pretty nicely. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. It looks interesting. I pre-ordered it.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I'm really interested in this one too. The idea of being able to play a PAX game cooperative really excites me, especially considering the given theme. I think that I could even get, maybe like, you want to talk about educational games. These are educational games that might be like too obtuse to use in a classroom, so to say, but they really, I'm looking forward to all that I will learn from this game. And I wonder how that rule book's going to be worded. There was interesting arguments in favor of British.
Yeah, is it or not? Marlon, knowing Phil Eklund. Phil Eklund does not usually beat around the bush when it comes to using language, I guess is the way to put it. Like, he's very much academic about it. He's like, come on, this is just the term. Deal with it.
Yeah, he's not like, he doesn't worry about the political correctness, I think you're referring to.
Yeah, no, and apparently according to Cole Worley, like, he's big into and I think that from what I've read online, that's put off a few people because they'll make a complaint about something, and like apparently Phil's method of having a conversation about the topic is to like really go for the argument. So like he comes off because it's pretty strong at times.
Sure. Well, I mean, to be able to do what he does, you really have to have that sort of a mindset.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know. I'm always interested in pretty much anything Sierra Madre's got going on, and I've liked every PAX game so far. So no.
Yeah. Why would you even hesitate?
I didn't. I was like, pre-orders are up. I'm ordering it now.
All right, well, that's Andy talking about PAX Emancipation. How about you, TC? You've got one there that it like sounds like a spell you cast in Harry Potter and get thrown in jail.
Yeah, this one just came up. This is a Kickstarter game, and the reason I'm hyping it because I've got to look into it. Someone mentioned that it was inspired by Doom. I'm like, really? Okay, I'm looking into it.
Oh,
that's all
boy.
I know. I will give you an update as soon as I learn more. It's on Kickstarter.
Called Imperius is what we're looking at, right?
Yes,
Oh,
it is
I have
Imperius.
heard
That's what I was
of that
referring
one
to, the
being
Imperius
battle-
curse, and
battle
it's
around.
apparently inspired by Doom. I think it's by Grant Rodiak. Yeah,
I think-
because he's.
yeah.
I read that same thing that you did. That was like, he loves Dune,
Mhm.
and he's designed a game that's supposed to kind of look somewhat into, explore some of those same elements that the game Dune did, but it does so in a listed playtime of 20 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember now. I just didn't remember the name Imperius. Just to me, it was kind of like, is this Imperial?
Nope. This is a Kickstarter card game designed by Dune that I'm going to be heavily looking into. So I will give you an update on it as soon as I learn more. That's my hype.
This looks awesome. All right. Well, do we have any more hypes here to go, gentlemen? Are we? No.
That's on my. Did Trent hype anything?
Nope.
I think Trent's
hyping bed.
Yeah,
No,
it's
Trent's
Trent
I
time.
have a hype.
Okay.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, I want to hype Eminent Domain Oblivion, which I just picked up. It's the third
Oh,
and
yeah.
theoretically final expansion for Eminent Domain. If you've ever played Eminent Domain, the big change this does is that it basically incorporates politics cards into the main game rather than just being something you start with and immediately chuck for something else. It actually has a role, and that role is that you're basically bringing out these agenda cards, and what agenda cards are basically alternate ways to score points, or basically just alternate ways to score points. So they're like new rules for the game, and there's a row of them that are out there, and then they have different costs associated with them. Like the one at the far right end of the row costs 2 political icons, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to the left. So it's like think of like Through the Ages. They get cheaper as they go. And then if you're able to pass them, they become an actual rule in the game. It's potentially supplant another one. The neat thing about this is if you're also doing that, you get an extra kicker, and that if you're supporting political things, you get these little tokens that have a political symbol on one side, you keep them face down, but on the other side is one of the other icons from the game, like research or all of those, explore, all of those, and you can just use those tokens as a kicker.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. I can't wait to get this to the table. It sounds really cool how this all works together. I mean, other than that, it doesn't really change much. It just gives politics a purpose, other than just chucking them to refine your deck in the first round, which is all you used to be able to do with it. And so that alone has me excited. I really like this game. Looking forward to playing. I'm having difficulty getting everything in the main box.
Oh, well, it's kind of like
a big box coming, right? They're making the big box, right?
I hope so. I will welcome any more Eminent Domain that ever comes out. So
it's a deck builder that really does something different. Andy, have you had a chance to play Eminent Domain?
No, it's I was always in a different game when it came up so far. Not avoiding it, just
decision from turn one is so, like, everything just seems to matter so much. Like the fact that your role is tied to, like, the cards that you end up putting in your deck. It's much more intentional deck building from the very beginning, but you still have to put cards into your discard pile. So that weird hypocrisy that you have where you hate that is still going to come up.
Eminent Domain really wasn't. No, I was never avoiding it. I think I've only seen it at game night a couple times, and I was already in something else, or the game was going on, or something like that.
Sure. Well, it's quick enough that it's kind of tough to like say like this is going to be the centerpiece of our game or of our game night, And I feel like it is definitely one though that offers an awful lot in a small amount of time, and I want to keep playing it more because I think that kind of makes it a good fit for my video review series that kind of specifically looks for the games that do just that and give you a ton of decisions in a small amount of time.
Yeah, I would say Eminent Domain is definitely in that. You feel like every decision. I mean, you're making, because of the follow mechanism, you're basically making important decisions on everybody's turn. And when it comes to your turn, like it feels like you've only got really 2 things you can do. But you've really got a ton of them, and you can really screw up bad if you do them wrong. To the point where your deck is garbage, and you feel like I'm a moron. That's just what I like about it. So there you go.
Yeah, for sure. That's a cool one to bring up. The only thing I wanted to just add here before we say goodbye is that if you felt like anything I said during this was specifically insightful or intelligent, it had nothing to do with me, and I don't take any responsibility for that. We had some amazing chatting going on consistently throughout to be suggesting new different games to explore, and a lot of what I said specifically was just kind of giving a voice to the community, and I'm happy to be able to do that. And I just wanted to thank, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all the guys that have been, largely you guys have been here from the beginning, and I know, some people ended up petering out there, especially those East Coasters that we got, that apparently some of them, though, will stay up all night with us, but it's okay when they've got 80-degree weather. We've got snow coming in Iowa. Anyway, no, I still love you, Mur, and Norm, and Paul, and Carter, and yeah, I hope I didn't miss anybody. I mean, it's just an amazing and an engaging chat that was consistently the type, when I think of like chat online, I it's so frequently you lose the human side of it. But here in the chat here at the Good, the Board, and the Ugly, it is really helpful and just an awesome community that everybody who's there right now is helping to contribute towards. So thank you for being a part of that, and I just want you guys to know that the insight that you're hearing specifically from me, I don't take credit for myself. So anyway, that's bringing us now to the end of this episode of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. I've been your host, Joe Sal, and I've been joined tonight by our East Coaster, or our West Coaster, I should say.
Me. Hi. Yes, that was me.
T.T. Reed. Also by Andy Dennison.
Good night, everybody.
And hopefully I just get a big, long snore here from our tiredest co-host, Trent Ham.
Good night.
Good night.
Hope you all have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Board, and the Ugly.